Gemara in Brachos Daf Hey Beis brings down a very interesting event. Rabbi Elazar was sick, and Rabbi Yochanan went to visit him. When Rabbi Yochanan walked in, he saw that it was dark, barely lit, and he came close to Rabbi Elazar. And as he came close to Rabbi Elazar, he saw that Rabbi Elazar was crying. And Rabbi Yochanan said to Rabbi Elazar, "Why are you crying? If it's because you haven't learned as much Torah as you wish, you should know echad amarbe v'echad amamit. As long as you've put in your best effort, as long as you've tried as much as you can, that's all Hashem asks for you. If it's because you don't have sufficient sustenance, not everyone is zochet to shtei shulchanos. If you're a Talmid Chacham, it's not guaranteed that you'll have sustenance in this world. And if it's because you don't have children, this is the bone of my 10th child that died." At which point Rabbi Yochanan pulled out a sudar, a handkerchief, unraveled it, and inside was the bone of his 10th son who died. At which point Rabbi Elazar said, "That's not why I'm crying. The reason why I'm crying is because your beauty will go into the ground and will never be found again." The Rashbam explains to us that Rabbi Yochanan was amongst the beautiful people of Yerushalayim. Not only was he a tzaddik, not only was he a kodesh, he had a toar, a beautiful appearance. Because people born in Yerushalayim in that time were so holy and so pure that not only was their neshama glorified, their body was different, remarkably beautiful. And Rabbi Elazar recognized that this was the end of that generations, and this was to be the end of it. And he said, "That's why I'm crying." At which point Rabbi Yochanan joined him in crying, and they both cried together. After a few moments, Rabbi Yochanan said, "Do you wish to continue this suffering that you're in?" Rabbi Elazar said, "Not them nor their schar. I don't wish for them nor for their reward." At which point Rabbi Yochanan took his hand and cured him. And that's how the Gemara concludes. And let's understand what this Gemara is trying to share with us by asking the obvious question. What was Rabbi Yochanan doing walking around with a bone of his son? He had 10 sons who died, and he used to carry around an etzem, a bone of his last remaining son. Why in the world was he carrying this around? And the Maharsha explains why. Because it was so precious, it was so beloved to Rabbi Yochanan to suffer, that he wanted to carry it around as a memento, as a way of remembering his pain, his sorrow, his suffering. And this Maharsha is quite difficult to understand. Because people go through travails, and people go through difficult times, and halavai, we get to the point of equanimity, of acceptance, of understanding. But how can a man say, "I found those moments so precious, so chaviv, that I didn't want to lose them," and therefore he carried around a memento, a bone of his son? And if the question isn't strong enough yet, Rabbi Yochanan explains to us how his 10th son died. There was this huge vat that was boiling up, and somehow his son fell in, and his flesh literally was melted off of his skin, and all that remained was this bone. That was all that he had left from his 10th son who died. And again, the Maharsha says, "Given the kol kach chaviv hayol litzta'er," because it was so beloved to Rabbi Yochanan to suffer, so he carried around. And the question is, how do we understand this? Rabbi Yochanan wasn't a masochist. We can't believe that he was interested in just torturing himself. What was so precious? What was he thinking? And I'd like to see if we can answer this question. And by doing that, I'd like to see if we could better understand why it is that Hashem metes out suffering, why it is that Hashem metes out pain. But before we engage in understanding why Hashem does these things, there's a very important caveat. I believe people make a fundamental mistake about pain and suffering. If you take your fist and smash it into the wall and you have pain, don't go blaming Hashem. "Hashem, why me? Ah, my knuckles, Hashem, why? Why?" You caused the pain. Don't go blaming Hashem when you cause yourself pain. And when the fellow gets divorced and then says, Hashem, why me, why me? And forgets the fact that he was screaming, ranting and raving and couldn't hold his temper back for 2 years as he verbally abused his wife, don't go blaming Hashem for your problems, and don't go blaming Hashem for the pain that you bring upon yourself. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about situations when it's clearly me'es Hashem. You're walking down the street, and not because you did anything careless, but a tree fell and smashed your hand. You weren't negligent. It's clearly from Hashem. In a situation where you get sick, or something happens. I had a manahel when I was in 8th grade, a beautiful man. A beautiful Bal Midos, Talmud Chacham, a Marbitz Torah. He brought a lulav and esrog, and he was putting them into the trunk of his car. He opened the trunk of his car to bend down, put the lulav and esrog in. Another car came from behind, smashed his legs into his own car. He wasn't negligent. He wasn't at fault, but he suffered tremendous, tremendous pain. That's when we have to ask the question. And that's what we need to understand. And the first premise we need to understand is that any time that a Jew feels pain, he should ask the following question: why? Hashem is the meitiv, Hashem is the benefactor, Hashem is kula tov. Anything that Hashem does is only for the good. Anything that Hashem metes out is only for a person's benefit. So if a Jew feels pain, if he suffers, the first question he should ask is why? Why is this happening to me? And I believe that there are 4 reasons, in general terms, why it is that Hashem will bring suffering to a person. The first is a course correction. There's sometimes when a person's headed in the wrong path. He's headed in the wrong way, and Hashem will bring a certain turn of events. Hashem will bring something about clearly orchestrated to change that person's path. Recently, I visited a young man in Otisville. That's Club Fed over there, minimum security. There are many people in Otisville who belong there, who deserve to be in far worse conditions. But this young man did not deserve to be there. I know the story very well, and it was a classic frame-up. Not only wasn't he guilty, there was no question that he was absolutely unaware, completely pulled into something, and he was not at all responsible. And you could see the orchestrations. You could see clearly how Hashem delivered him to be there. And people change, because when you have a lot of time to think, when you have a lot of time to contemplate, when you're in conditions that are not exactly comfortable, you take a different perspective on life, and you come out a different person. If you ask him now, does he understand the chesed of Hashem? I doubt it. But ask him 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I almost guarantee he'll say the words, it was the greatest thing that happened to me, because I've seen this young man change in the few months he's been there. He's deeper, more philosophical, has a totally different mahalach hachayim, and he will come out a different person. So the first reason why Hashem will bring pain and suffering is to bring us back onto course. Sometimes a person will lose his money. Sometimes he'll lose his health. Because it's the greatest chesed, it brings him back to a different point, changes his direction in life, and it's rather simple and obvious to see. There's another reason why Hashem will bring pain to a person. Because pain deepens a person. I knew a young woman who, when she was then a young girl, she was 9 years old, and she lost her father. Being the oldest of her siblings, she became surrogate mother at the tender age of 9. She is a very, very different person. Giving, caring, other-centered. She never could have become the person she is had she had a regular childhood. Now, you and I don't wish that upon anybody. To be a yosom at the age of 9 is not pretty. But the bottom line is, she is a better person. She's deeper. She is fundamentally a more developed person because of that. And there are many times that Hashem will bring pain, will bring suffering, because again, it deepens our perspective and gives us a different understanding, whether it directly changes our course in life or just gives us a vastly different understanding of things. And that's the second reason why Hashem will bring pain. First, it will change a person's life course. Second, because it deepens a person. But there's a third reason. Chazal tell us that one of the saddest things that you will ever see is a Rasha v'tovlo. When you see a wicked man who has a great money and honor and pleasures, a gorgeous home, every business deal he touches succeeds, and his fame, honor, glory goes out. Chazal tell us, know and understand you are watching a very, very wicked thing unfolding. Why? Because when a Rasha has it good in this world, what it means is that at some point he did something right. And if it could be, Hashem feels obligated to pay him back. But Hashem doesn't want to pay him back in Olam Haba. Olam Haba is forever. And the payment there is such valuable currency that it's unimaginable. Hashem pays him back now where it's quick, where it's cheap. Pay him back now, get rid of him, so that la'asid lovo, he disintegrates, he's no longer there. And when you watch a Rasha who has it very good in this world, no one understands. You're watching a man eating up his Olam Haba in this world. You're watching a man who literally is getting the worst deal of his life. And it's the opposite. When you have a person who be'etzim is good, who be'etzim is going in the right path, and he suffers real, acute, serious pain, many a time it's a kapara, many a time it's very simply, he's great, he accomplished, but he did certain things inappropriate, and did certain things that were wrong, and if he had to bring that with him to the Olam HaEmes, then for eternity he'd be scarred, forever he'd be damaged. Hashem says, let me pay him back here. Here, it's temporary, it's quick, it may hurt, but before you know it, it's gone and it's over. Let him suffer now rather than the world to come. And that's the third reason why Hashem will bring pain to a person, kapara, atonement. And there's a fourth reason. The fourth reason is something called Yisurim Shel Ahava. Yisurim Shel Ahava means you didn't deserve it. It's not even beneficial for you in the sense that it's going to change your life course. It's Yisurim for which you're going to gain schar in the world to come. And pain, travails that you go through, because in the world to come you'll gain schar for it. These situations are very rare. These situations, Yisurim Shel Ahava, are for tzaddikim. Rare it is that we'll meet a man who's on that madrega. The vast majority are 1, 2, or 3. Either it's a course correction, or it's something that deepens you, or it's mechaper. And that's the only reason why Hashem will bring pain, for our benefit, for our good. And in a very real sense, it should be easy to endure suffering. It should be easy to endure pain. I know that Hashem is the meitiv. I know that Hashem is giving. I know that Hashem is magnanimous. I know that Hashem loves me more than I could ever imagine. So obviously it's easy for me to endure pain. Except for one problem. What's the difference between a philosophical question and an assignment? What's the difference between a philosophical dilemma and a life test? I'll share with you the difference. A philosophical question is when you break your leg. A terrible car crash, you break your leg, and for 6 weeks you're laid up in a hospital. Hashem, I don't understand. He's such a good man. Hashem, why'd you do it? I don't understand it. That's a philosophical question. When I stub my toe, ow! And I'm in pain, that's a nisayon. That's a test. You know why? Because I could be very philosophical, very detached when it's your pain. I could weigh the pros, the cons, the advantages in this world and the world to come, and I could reach the conclusion it's good for him. But that's when it's your pain. When it's my pain, oh, it's a whole different ball of wax. And when it's my pain, and it's even a little bit of pain, it's an assignment because the pain blinds me, it overtakes my shura saseichel, my wisdom, and it becomes very, very difficult to deal with. So, whilst it's easy, in a theoretical sense, to deal with pain and suffering, in a practical sense, it's quite difficult. So I'd like to share with you the techniques. 2 techniques that I think make a tremendous difference and will hopefully make it much easier. The Sefer HaChinuch explains in the mitzvah of tefillah, he says that the Ramban holds that any time a Jew is suffering, any time a Jew is in pain, he's obligated min HaTorah to daven to Hashem. As a matter of fact, the Sefer HaChinuch says that the Ramban's shita is that the only time you're obligated to daven is when you're in trouble. When you need something, when you have a tzorach, when you really require something, or you're in danger, that's the only time you're obligated to daven. And then the Sefer HaChinuch says something profound. He says, and if a Jew is in such a situation and he doesn't daven, not only is he mevatel mitzvah, so say not only doesn't he fulfill the mitzvah, he's meisir hashkacha so me'elov. He's taking away the hashkacha from him. He's denying Hashem's intervention. He's pretending that Hashem is not involved at all in the world. If you're in a rough situation and you don't call out to Hashem for help, you are acting as if Hashem isn't the manig of the world, doesn't run the world, and you're denying hashkacha. Now here's the question. Why is that so obvious? Maybe you don't believe in tefillah. I believe Hashem runs the world. I believe Hashem is active in every part of the world, and that I don't think my tefillahs are worthy. I don't think I'm worthy. I don't think Hashem's going to accept my tefillah. Maybe tefillah doesn't really work. Why does it have to be that if I'm in trouble and I don't daven, I'm denying Hashem's involvement in the world? Would you like to know the answer to this question? If you're climbing up a ladder and you're painting a shelf, and there are people walking by, and suddenly you start slipping and the ladder starts trembling, no matter who it is down there, help, help, grab the ladder, grab the ladder. You don't have to know the guy, you don't have to be a friend of his, you'll call out for help because someone can change it. If I recognize the fact that Hashem is here, if I recognize the fact that Hashem is involved in the runnings of the world, how is it possible that I didn't call out, help Hashem, I need a parnasa, help Hashem, I'm sick, help Hashem, I'm in danger. If you don't call out, you're denying Hashem's involvement in the world. You're not denying the power of tefillah. You're not denying the effect of davening. You're denying Hashem's presence. You're denying Hashem's involvement in the world, because if it were a mere stranger you would call out for help, surely if it were HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And with that as a premise, I'd like to share with you why it is so difficult to deal with pain. And because most of the time we ask the following question: Keli, lama zavtani, Hashem, why have you let this happen to me? Hashem, why did you abandon me? Hashem, why did you let the forces of the world of nature to come about and do what they've done? Hashem, why did you leave me to this? And when you say those words, recognize the fact that those words are kthira. Because Hashem did not step back and allow those things to happen to you. Hashem brought them to you. Hashem is the Borei Umanig, the creator and one who orchestrates all of physicality. He maintains physicality, and every activity on the planet is guided by Hashem. Hashem did not step back and allow the forces of nature to take over. Not if you're a Jew. Hashem was there bringing them right to your doorstep. And the first question that you have to ask is not Lama Azavtani, not Hashem, why have you left me, but rather Hashem, why have you brought this to me? And that question is vastly different. Because once you understand that it's Hashem who brought it to you, and once you understand and you start studying the events and the circumstances, and you see the Yad Hashem step after step, carefully laid plans to bring this pain to you, and then you ask the second question, the right question, and that is why. And the Gemara in Bracha says that la'olam yafashvesh adam es ma'asav. When a person has pain, and a person is suffering, the first question he has to ask is why? Hashem, why did you bring this to me? And if you look in Rashi and that Gemara, Rashi implies that most of the time you'll understand the reason. It will be obvious. Because if Hashem is bringing that to teach you a lesson, if Hashem is bringing that to straighten your ways, if you couldn't see it, it wouldn't be as effective. If it's to give you a different course in life, if it's to deepen you, if it's a kapara for something you've done, most likely you'll be able to see it, and most likely you'll be able to put the pieces together. And when you have that perspective, when you have that understanding, then you have to do what we human beings have a very difficult time doing. You have to start thinking and thinking. Hashem loves me. Hashem runs the whole world for the good of mankind. Hashem created me not because Hashem owes me anything. There's nothing that I could have done that made me worthy to be created. Before I was in this world, I didn't do anything to be worthy to be created. Hashem created me kulo for chesed, completely to give to me, to share His good with me, and everything that He does is for my good. And when I see the pain, and when I see the delivery, and I see Hashem bring me to that, I have to say the words, it's for my good, it's for my good. And when you start dwelling on this long enough and hard enough, you begin to understand the reason why. You begin to have a vastly different understanding of pain and of suffering. And if a person works on this, he reaches a very high madrega. Would you like to know what madrega a person could reach? I'll give you a mashal. Imagine a young girl, make her 5 or 6 years old. She's holding her mother's hand, and they're walking together to the hospital for her second round of chemotherapy. Now the little girl knows that the drugs that they're going to put into her body makes her very sick. She knows that when she brushes her hair falls out in clumps. And she doesn't understand how this is any good for her. But she takes her mother's hand, knowing full well that this is for her good. Mommy loves me. Mommy knows better than I. And she walks fully confident with her mother, knowing that her mother is doing this for her good. And that madrega is something that we can reach. It requires thinking, it requires understanding, it requires first and foremost seeing Hashem active, bringing the pain, and then asking the why. And if we work long enough and hard enough, we could reach that madrega, and we could have a very different vantage point. But there is a totally different level of understanding pain that most likely we're not going to reach, but it is in existence. And to understand that level, let me share with you a mashal. Imagine Moshe, a little boy, he's 5 years old, and Moshe has a very, very wealthy grandfather. Zaidi has got lots and lots of money. Anyway, Zaidi comes to Hanukkah, and Zaidi goes to Moshe's room, and Moshe shows Zaidi his piggy bank. Zaidi, look what I got! And Moshe opens up the bottom, and he pulls out some of the shiny pennies. See this one, Zaidi? This is my favorite. It's the shiniest. And this is my second favorite. And this one's shiny. And this one is from 3 years ago. Zaidi, do you see these? What does Zaidi do? Zaidi takes each of the 5 pennies, puts them in his pocket, pulls out his wallet, pulls out a $1,000 bill, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, replaces the pennies with $1,000 bills, and walks out of the room. 20 minutes later, it's time for supper, and everyone's called down, and Mommy can't find Moshe. Where's Moshe? He's up in his room. Mommy goes up to the room and sees Moshe, walks in the room, and there's Moshe crying. Moshe, what's the matter? What's the matter, Zaidi? Zaidi took my pennies. What do you mean took me? And he gave me these green things. Zaidi took my shiny pennies. Moshe's 5 years old. Moshe doesn't understand that copper pennies are worth a penny and a $1,000 bill is worth $1,000. In Moshe's mindset, he suffered because Zaidi took from him. Our Chassidikim explains that any pain that we feel in this world, we have to recognize that what we're doing is Hashem is taking away from us little copper coins and rewarding us with gold bars at every ounce of pain that we suffer, every little problem that we go through, every travail. We're going to see its value in the world to come 1,000,000th times greater, and at that point we'll dance a jig. At that point we'll feel joy. But the only way you can begin to understand that is if you step out of this world. Nothing under the sun will allow you to understand pain, will allow you to understand suffering. If you sincerely believe that life ends in the grave, if as Elsie the cow, when she dies, her nefesh just evaporates. If you sincerely believe that when you die, it's over, darkness, and it's done, there are no answers to many, many questions, and you will never understand pain, you will never understand suffering. But if you're able to go a little bit further, if you're able to see that I will exist in the world to come, and what I made myself into, I will be for eternity, and you begin to study that, and you begin to think about it, and you begin to understand the value system that we work with here is very, very transient, very, very passing. There's an expression I heard many times written about that in the concentration camps, and that was real suffering. And they would say that a day is forever long, but months are very, very short. You see, when you're suffering pain, the moment is so long, but the weeks fly by, the months fly by, and when you look back after a travail, when you look back after months and months of pain and suffering, you realize how quickly it passed and it's gone. But who I am I am forever. And when you understand that perspective, you understand that every ounce of pain, every small, minute amount of suffering that I go through is going to be so valued by me in the world to come that it's literally like exchanging pennies for gold bars. Let me share with you one example. In the time of the Gra, there was a Ger Tzedek. This was a man who was of Polish nobility. And the Catholic Church did not take lightly to the idea of Gentiles becoming Jewish. As a matter of fact, the Catholic Church took it as a major affront. And this individual was of Polish nobility, and it became a major scandal. How could such a man become a detested, despised Jew? And they began a manhunt. They began a search throughout Poland to find this man. The Vilna Gaon knew about this Ger Tzedek. I don't know if they ever met, but the Vilna Gaon understood that this man was in fact a tzaddik. And this Ger Tzedek was caught. He was tortured and tortured. Will he recant? Will he give it up? Torture after torture, day after day, week after week, he would not recant. The Gra sent a message to him that if he wished, the Gra would use the Shema Mufurash and get him out of prison, because the Gra held that that was the madrega that this man was on, and this man refused. If this is what Hashem wants, I'm willing to give up my life. And in fact, he was slated to be burnt at the stake. After months of torture, the head inquisitor, the particular priest whose job it was to break this convert, walks over to this Ger Tzedek and says with tears in his eyes, I know I'm wrong. I know that you're an innocent man, and I know that you're a holy man. Please, I beg you, please forgive me. Forgive me. Promise me that you'll forgive me for what I've done wrong to you. As the story is told, the Ger Tzedek looked at this priest and said, forgive you? Forgive you? Let me give you a mashal, a parable. There was once a king. He's sitting on his throne, and in walks a countryman, a regular peasant. And the man falls on his face in front of the king. Please, Your Majesty, forgive me for what I've done. Forgive me for what I've wrong. Stand up. Who are you? What are you? Your Majesty, don't you remember? No. Don't you remember we were boys? We used to play together. Oh, yeah, we used to play together. And Your Majesty, don't you remember many times I'd throw you on the ground, many times I'd wrestle you to the ground and I'd beat you? Your Majesty, forgive me. The king looks down at the citizen and says, forgive you. We were kids playing. That's normal. There's nothing to forgive you. There's no... Okay? Says the Ger Tzedek to the priest, when I leave this world, all of these things are child's play. They're so insignificant, so trivial. There's nothing for you to ask forgiveness for. There's nothing that I have to be mochel. And he was burnt at the stake. Would you like to understand Pshat in Rabbi Yochanan? Rabbi Yochanan reached a level of transcendence. He no longer was bound by this physical world. He no longer interpreted things with the coinage, with the currency of the world. He was a Ben Olam Haba, and he saw this world as but the stage, but the life setting that allows him to grow. And he recognized that for eternity, forever, he would be what he shaped himself into. He saw himself in Olam Haba, and he recognized that everything in this world, money, glory, honor, are but stage settings, props on the stage to be used. And because of that, he was able to recognize, Hashem brought me this pain. Hashem took away this son and this son. But Hashem is kulo tov. Hashem is all good. Why would Hashem want me to suffer? Why would Hashem bring this to me? It must be for my benefit. Wow, the reward that's awaiting for me. Wow, look what's coming. And because of that, Rabbi Yochanan said the words, these are chaviv. These are precious. Explains the Mashal, he carried that bone around because kol kach haya chaviv lo litztayer. He so valued the pain that he went through because the man transcended physical conditions. He saw himself as a ben olam haba. And while it's true that we will probably never get there, it's eye-opening and inspiring to see a man who so clearly cuts through the darkness. We live in such a physical world of blackness, of darkness. We take this world so seriously. My conditions here, my pleasures, my name, my reputation. If I could ever get it straight, that in a heartbeat, when I leave this earth, all of it is nothing. They don't ask me how much money I had. They don't ask me how much glory and honor I had. They don't ask me how thick the carpeting in my living room was. You drove a 6-year-old car? Aren't you embarrassed? Said the malachim to me as they escort me into Hashem's presence. I don't think so. But everything that we put stock in here, and everything that we value here, in a moment of clarity, dissolves and becomes irrelevant. And quite the opposite. Everything that we didn't consider chashuv here, whether it be learning, whether it be chesed, whether it be looking out for another Jew's good, or whether it be painful situations that Hashem brought me to. In that moment of clarity, when the body's put in the grave, I separate and I see the extraordinary value. I see that it literally was copper coins, a little bit of pain, my arm, my leg. It was nothing, trivial things. And now for eternity, my olam haba is greater, is better. In that moment, there's joy, there's simcha, and a tremendous sense of happiness. It's important for us to understand it. It's important for us to relate to people like Rabbi Yochanan, who transcended, who literally could look at pain as what it is, a tool, a prop to allow me to become closer to my Creator. And halavai, we get to the level where we trust Hashem enough to see Hashem there, see Hashem bring the pain, and know while I may not understand it, Hashem does, and that level of trust is enough. And again, I think this is an important concept to think about, an important concept to dwell upon. And I think, interesting enough, it's also very nogeah. I'll explain to you why. For many years now, I've said, half seriously, that I'm jealous of alcoholics. I'm at least half seriously jealous of a good, real alcoholic. I'll explain to you why. I've read through Alcoholics Anonymous, the big book, a number of times already. And the thing that stands out most is line after line, person after person who says, I knew that the next drink probably would kill me, and I couldn't not take the next drink. They had hit bottom. They recognized that their life was totally unmanageable. One more drink and they'd get so drunk and not be able to stop, they probably would die, and they couldn't not take the next drink. And what is the salvation? The first step of Alcoholics Anonymous is to recognize that I cannot do it. It is beyond me. I cannot win this. And then you come to recognition that I have to trust in what they call my higher power. You put your trust in Hashem. And you turn to Hashem and you say the words, Hashem, I cannot do it. It is beyond me. I can't. I can only rely on you, and I trust in you. Please do for me that which I cannot do for myself. And when you read story after story and buy it, you buy it on Amazon for $1.50 used, buy that thick Alcoholics Anonymous book, and you'll see real emunah. People really trusting in Hashem. And why do I say I'm half jealous? After all, we're maminim, we trust in Hashem. I daven, right? Would you like to know what my davening, and probably a lot of our davening is really like? I'll give you a mushal. Imagine there's a guy who has a very important appointment in Manhattan. He's a trial lawyer. This is a major client, and the appointment is for 2:30. He leaves his house early, make sure he's there, and he gets stuck in traffic on the GW, and it doesn't move, and he's starting to sweat. It's getting later and later. Oh my goodness, a major client. If I lose this client, a bit later and later. And he finally gets over to GW, and he gets into Midtown, and he looks at his watch, and it's 2:25. Oh my goodness, I'm cooked. He races as quick as he can to the building, sees a garage there, and sees the word full. Oh my goodness. Runs to the next garage. Full. He circles around the block. Full. There's not a spot to be had. It's Midtown. He's sweating. It's now 2:30. Oh my goodness. Hashem, help. Please, if I lose this client, I'm toast. Hashem, please, I promise I'll learn. I'll learn an hour a week. Please, Hashem. He circles around the block another time. It's 2:35. 2:40. Hashem, I promise an hour a day. I'll learn that for you. Hashem, please. As he says those words, a beam of light shines right on the spot. And he sees there's no car there. Oh my goodness, I've been around this block 4 times. There was a car there, I know, and there's no car there. Oh my goodness. He turns his eyes up to Hashem and says, Hashem, deal's off. I don't need your help. I found it myself. Thank you. And pulls him to the spot. I hate to admit this, but there's many a time when I recognize that I need help. And I daven, Hashem, I need help with parnos, I need help with shalom bayis, I got a problem with my kids. Hashem, Hashem, please help. And a funny thing happens. I feel a little bit of desperation, I feel a little bit of dependency, and then suddenly I get a job. And the job turns out to be quite financially successful, and I start making money, and I become like that guy who says, I don't need you, Hashem, I found a parking spot on my own. Listen, Hashem, that business belt before I needed help with parnasa, I'll take care of parnasa myself now. Other stuff I'll leave to you, but I'm quite sufficient here. And if you think I'm kidding, just pay attention to the way we daven. Halavai, we wake up and recognize that we need Hashem, but that's a very quick and passing sense of dependence. Because no sooner do we get cured from our problems, our illness, our issues, than we feel the sense of security of, listen, Hashem, I don't really need you. I mean, it was nice of you, but I'm okay now, thank you anyway, and the deal's off. But you see, when you're an alcoholic, you can't make that mistake. Because you've fallen time after time, month after month for years, and you recognize that you hit bottom. And when you actually call out to Hashem, it's with a real desperation. It's with a real crying out, Hashem, I can't do it. Hashem, it's up to you. And when you really relinquish control and you fully put your faith in Hashem, that's real, it's powerful, it's life-changing. But you see, what it requires is understanding that Hashem is really present. It requires understanding that Hashem is really here. And then when you actually say the words, Hashem, I can't do it, but I rely on you, I depend on you, that is a life-changing recognition. And when you say those words in the right way, you reach a vastly different level of understanding. I think this Gemara is a tremendous illustration for us. When Rabbi Yochanan stood in front of Rabbi Elazar, he said the words, this should be your nechama. I suffered the loss of 10 sons. But as the Mashal explains, he didn't suffer it with bitterness. He didn't say, well, I guess Hashem must have had some plan. I don't know what it is, but whatever. Drat, I guess Gamzu Latova. He so enjoyed the pain. He so valued the pain that he literally carried around the bone of his son as a memento. Look at the love Hashem has for me. Look at the tremendous outpouring that Hashem has of concern for me, and yet Hashem has brought this to me. This must be the most beautiful, precious thing in the world. And you know why Rabbi Yochanan was able to feel that? Because he saw Hashem present, and he understood the midos of Hashem. Hashem is the meitiv. Hashem is a giving, loving, kindly God who only wants what's for our best. And when a Jew suffers, the very first question he has to ask is why? What's pshat? And there will be 4 reasons. It's either a course correction. Maybe I'm headed in the wrong path. But Hashem, the money was great, and I was wealthy, and I was given tzedakah, hand over fist, right? Isn't it true? My name was on that building, and on that building, and in this Sefer Torah. My name was all over town for giving tzedakah, right? Yeah, but you were Baal Gaiva. And you were destroying yourself. And a little bit more, and you would have been divorced, and your kids would have hated you, and every person on the planet would have looked at you as a bombastic fool. And sometimes it is that Hashem removes situations from us because a course correction, it puts us in a different path, in a different way. There's sometimes that Hashem will bring pain. Why? Because it deepens us, gives us a different perspective. We tend to get very caught up in the here and now. We tend to become very frivolous, very involved in all the busyness of life. But it's rare that we actually think and understand. And when you have pain, when you have troubles, when you have worries, you start thinking, you become a deeper person. There's also a concept of kapara, that it's payback. But all 3 of these, Rashi explains, you can see. Study the pain, see Hashem right there, and ask why. Most likely you'll understand the why. If it's a kapara, most likely you'll see it. If it's a course correction, you'll understand it. But you have to be honest. But the only way a Jew can deal with pain is not to make the mistakes that we normally make. Hashem didn't allow it to happen. Hashem didn't sit back and let the forces of nature take over. Hashem brought this to me. Hashem is bringing me to this. And Hashem is constantly putting me in this situation. And that's when I have to recognize and understand that Hashem is not evil. Hashem is not chas v'shalom bad. Hashem is doing it for my good. And that's when I have to begin thinking, asking the why, reaching a higher level. And if I reach a level like a Rabbi Yochanan, I reach a level of transcendence, I reach a level of a Ger Tzedek who understands that everything Hashem does is for the good, and I reach a level of loving Hashem, and the pain not only helps me love Hashem to a greater extent.